It is week 2 of the LCS Summer Split with coverage brought to you by Alienware. It's the second day here, Saturday. I'm joined right now by Coach Jimmy. Is that your handle?
Technically, I wouldn't say it's a handle. It's just my name.
Okay,
All the gamer tags I've had over the years, something I probably don't want on stage. So we'll go with Jimmy, just to be professional.
very good. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me about how things are going with Dig. Is this the first time we've done an interview? I know you were working with Golden Guardians. I usually talk to Nara, so I don't know if this is our first.
Yeah, this is our first interview. So as someone who's followed since, I don't know, forever when you started this, it's definitely weird for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh well, thank you, thank you. I mean, I would expect that you being on stage doing pick ban and stuff like that would be the weirder thing rather than the post game Discord call with me. But I appreciate it. So, what is it like coaching Dignitas? Because I assume it seems like a wild set of personalities that you have on the team. I mean, obviously Dardoch is the one that I think stands out for a lot of people, but what has this been like? I want to talk to you just because obviously the team I think has overperformed expectations since the start of the year.
Sure, it's been a really fun experience coming into Dignitas from Golden Guardians. To be honest, it was pretty similar to when I first joined Golden Guardians in the 2A player role position, where the org wasn't performing the year before. So when I come in, it's going to be a different experience than, let's say, you're joining C9, TSM, TL, some of these orgs that are consistently at the top. So for me, it felt kind of the same, where I got to experience a lot at Golden Guardians as far as how you build up players that people don't really know about or have overlooked. You know, how you build up a team that's competitive to compete with some of those top teams. So for me, it's been a lot of fun just trying to find the right pairing of players, seeing how we're learning inside the game and outside of the game. You're absolutely right. There's definitely some unique personalities between Dardoch or Aframu, and then we have a lot of guys who are really young with less experience. But for us, I think we just try to use it for our strength. I mean, we're a unique team. It shows in how we play the game. But when you see a lot of the community or analysts talking about, hey, this team fights really well, I think there's a lot to be said about how the guys are getting along outside of the game.
Well, so they must be getting along outside of the game, which like I think I almost feel guilty talking about it so often, but Dardoch has this reputation that has just prevailed over all of these years, and so I don't know if you can speak to sort of the way that he is these days, because everybody I think knows him from the Breaking Point days, and then from roster swapping a lot. And you mentioned people seem to get along really well. So, I mean, what are the vibes like over there these days?
A little vibe check. So from my perspective, actually, I would start off with kind of a funny story, but my first big interview, I guess, for an LCS team was actually TL right before Breaking Point happened. So I sat down
Oh,
with Steve. Yeah, I sat down with Steve and Mark, and a lot of discussions where, how do you work with a player that's really confident and tends to be right that can get a little emotional? And from my perspective, the answer is simple, and maybe it was too simple for them then, but it was, spend time and actually try to understand where he's coming from, try to find the positives and be really transparent about things you want to work on. I would say there's a lot to be said for the fact that, I mean, I see a Reddit comment where it's like, hey, we haven't heard anything about Dardoch. And I think a lot of that is just trying to set him up as a leader here, trying to make sure that he knows he's heard, trying to be a balance point for times where he's going to get frustrated. But from my perspective, Josh is not only one of the smartest players I've worked with, but when you're a coach, you want a player like this. You want a player that wants to give their best, that wants to win. I think this is something that holds back NA, to be honest, where there's a lot of people that I think are just okay having a job, or they're just going to take whatever opportunity and they just hope it works out. But Josh is someone where, I mean, he's going to put his influence on whatever he's working on. So for our guys, when we bring in a lot of young guys who don't have as much experience, maybe that's part of it, where it's a lot easier for them just to listen and kind of understand how Josh wants to play the game, a bit of adaptation and trying to work around that. And I think that showed in spring. I mean, we're team fighting a lot. Josh is definitely a player you could say is like a catalyst. He's going to look to fight. He doesn't want to just AFK farm. And I think our guys just kind of understand that, and that's where our team identity is starting. And I know for Josh, he would say the same, where we don't want it to always be like that. The expectation is all the players are capable of doing this, speaking their mind, and stepping up to the plate when it really matters. So I would say definitely not perfect. I mean, we have some weaknesses, and we have moments where, yeah, we get frustrated, losing sucks. But I think the environment's been pretty good. I'm proud of my guys so far for how we've held up.
so it sounds like the maybe times have changed. I mean, I part of the reason I bring this up is because in Hotline League this week we had a caller, and I either maybe it was in chat or the caller, but it sparked a conversation with Mark and I on like, is the Dardoch conversation, outdated? These sort of expectations around the way he behaves, and I totally get you can't throw a player under the bus that's on your team, but I guess I just wonder how much of those passionate vibes are still there, and you guys have just figured out a way to like manage the situation versus if he has just sort of like calmed down in his elder years as an LCS player?
I mean, I feel like saying managing, it sounds kind of ridiculous to me because I look at it and I mean, when Josh first started out, he's a 17, 18-year-old kid that's just getting thrown into a high stress situation. I would make the argument that a lot of the staffs and managers that have worked with him have just done a terrible job, to be perfectly honest. And I would also give a lot of credit to Josh. I mean, he's aware of a lot of the stuff. He's been trying to put in time to work on these things. So for me, yeah, I mean, I don't look at it as managing. I think we just try to have a good relationship. A lot of what I took from Golden Guardians and getting to watch the Warriors when I was up there was your culture is going to come from your head coach and your confident players or your players that have really strong personalities. And I think in our case, Josh and I have a really good relationship where it's pretty easy to talk through stuff in an honest way where we're able to see stuff that, yeah, we want to get better at. And we're also recognizing, I mean, he's gotten a lot better than what he was before. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the fun parts of working with Dardoch, which is his champion pool. How do you manage that actually? Because I think people might not have a lot of insight into how the dig stuff works. You guys, I think, have a smaller coaching staff than a lot of these other teams, and so I don't know if this is kind of similar to what G2 was for a long time, where you're the grabs, and all these players are kind of like helping to manage themselves and make a lot of decisions around pick and ban their way, or I don't know how the dynamics work there. So I'm kind of curious how you manage the team, and whenever Dardoch wants to play something, is that coming from you and you're helping facilitate that, or if they're just managing a lot of the champion picks themselves?
I can't speak to what Grabs and what his function was on G2, but I can say for our case, I mean, we do have a smaller staff. I have myself, Mabry, and Jim, our analyst. For us, it's just a lot of back and forth with the players where we're trying to brainstorm how we want to play the game, what we think is good. There's going to be a lot of ideas that are going to pop up that in hindsight aren't great, or maybe we didn't have a perfect read on. But at least from my perspective, the most important thing when you're drafting and getting on stage is, do your players have something that they want to play that they think is actually good? And from my perspective, I mean, the way you get to that point is you just spend a lot of time during practice, outside of practice, trying to talk about these scenarios and what could happen. So when I'm referencing my relationship with Josh or Dardoch, there's a lot of talks about this. I would say the Darius game, looking back, that's not a Darius angle. I think I just messed up draft terribly there. That was my fault. So it's not always going to work out, but I like having that that kind of variability that can come out because I think it makes it tough to know what we want to do. I think there's some LCS teams where it's really easy to call all 5 picks and bans what you think they're going to do.
Yeah.
And for us, there's sometimes where it's going to help us, sometimes it might hinder us, but I think it's part of our style.
Kobe's here.
In the background.
Kobe wants to say hi. He just got home from casting. Have you met Jimmy before from Dignitas?
Hi, Jimmy.
Yeah, Kobe says hi.
Very professional. What's up?
You're not enjoying this, I feel like. I was hoping you would enjoy it. You just stone-faced.
No, I didn't know how to transition for that one. I mean, I know there's some awkward moments in some Travis interviews, so...
No, well, you said you've been watching my stuff for a long time. Normally, we don't get the impromptu visits from people whenever I'm at home the way I would in the parking lot at the LCS.
Sure.
We just got it. We're about to head off to a social function for the first time in a while. But no, exciting. I think I appreciate the insight into the way things are working for Dignitas, because I think you guys are a bit of a black box. Maybe not because of, maybe it's my fault as much as anybody's, but I feel like I think you guys have done some really interesting stuff over the course of this year, and people I don't think always have the insight into why. So I'm glad to be able to get that from you. Is there anything that you want to say to any of the fans out there that people should know about Dignitas?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I'm happy with the people that are supporting us and the fans that are tuning in, whether we have a draft that makes sense or that Darius draft. For me, I think people have kind of a misconception for what a development roster looks like or how it should function. I think people have a general idea of how they think it should work. In our case, there's definitely some moments where I'm a little frustrated with how people are talking about us when they're not really seeing the perspective for some of the guys who don't have a ton of experience. So I think that's part of why when you say we're in like a black box, I think that's how you worded it. It's, we have some veterans and some young guys, so I think people just don't know where to place us. But from the inside, it's always been, okay, I mean, we know we have the potential to win. We think that, especially with the core of NA players, I mean, it's fun. It's a fun story. And we want to do it our own way. And I think that if people can kind of take time and be patient with us as we kind of fall forward and mess up sometimes, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised what a group of NA players can actually accomplish in this region.
Well, Jimmy, it's great to speak with you and to get to meet you. as I've said in some of my own content, I have a lot of respect for what you guys have been able to do over the course of this year. And so getting that insight is great. Thanks so much for the interview. And for everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things LCS right here on my YouTube channel. Oh my gosh. Summer split. You know what that means? It's summer. And you might be thinking to yourself, time to go outside and enjoy the sun. Enjoy the wilderness. Go climb a mountain. No. That stuff is dangerous. You know what's safe? Alienware computers. And playing games on them. Including, by the way, their new X Series line of notebooks, which you can go check out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below. Be safe. Play video games. It's the way to live. That's how I live. And I'm still alive, so clearly it's working.